On the morning of August 27, 1883, people in Australia heard a sound. They were over 3,000 miles away from where it came from. Some of them thought it was a cannon. Some thought it was a ship in distress firing a signal. Police were dispatched to investigate. They found nothing. Because the thing that made the sound was not in Australia. It was not anywhere near Australia. It was on the other side of the world. And it was the loudest sound any human being has ever heard in recorded history. What happened on that morning rearranged the planet in ways that took scientists decades to fully understand. And even now, the full scale of it does not feel real. It feels like something that belongs in mythology, not in a history book with exact dates and witness testimonies and barometric readings. But it happened. And once you understand what it actually did to the Earth, you will never think about sound the same way again. The island was called Krakatoa. It sat in the Sunda Strait between Java and Sumatra in what is now Indonesia. It was a volcanic island, had been for as long as anyone could remember, and it had shown signs of activity in the months before August 1883. There had been smaller eruptions, ash clouds, rumbling, the kind of geological restlessness that people in the region had learned to live alongside. Nobody evacuated. Nobody thought what was coming was anything more than what had come before. At 10:02 in the morning, the magma chamber beneath Krakatoa collapsed. The ocean rushed in. And what happened next was not an explosion in any sense most people understand the word. It was a pressure event of such incomprehensible scale that the atmosphere of the entire planet responded to it like a struck bell. The sound itself was measured at approximately 180 decibels at a distance of 160 kilometers. To put that in context, a jet engine at close range produces around 140 decibels. A gunshot next to your ear is around 150. The threshold at which sound begins to directly destroy human tissue is somewhere around 185. The sound of Krakatoa was so loud that people standing within 16 kilometers of the eruption had their eardrums physically ruptured by the pressure wave alone, before the ash or the heat or the collapse reached them. The sound did not arrive as sound. It arrived as force. But here is where it becomes something else entirely. Sound travels through air as a pressure wave. It compresses and expands the air in front of it as it moves outward from its source. Most sounds dissipate quickly because the energy that drives them is small and the air absorbs it over distance. But the energy released by Krakatoa was not small. Geologists estimate the eruption released the equivalent of approximately 200 megatons of TNT. For comparison, the largest nuclear weapon ever detonated, the Soviet Tsar Bomba in 1961, released around 50 megatons. Krakatoa released 4 times that energy in a single event, from a volcanic island that had existed for millions of years in complete geological obscurity. The pressure wave did not dissipate. It traveled outward from the Sunda Strait at the speed of sound, roughly 340 meters per second, and it did not stop when it reached the edge of a continent or an ocean. It kept going. Barometric pressure stations around the world, which were at the time a relatively new scientific technology, began recording anomalous readings within hours of the eruption. A station in Calcutta recorded it. A station in Bombay recorded it. A station in Mauritius recorded it. A station in St. Petersburg recorded it. A station in Washington, D.C. recorded it. Every barometric station on the surface of the Earth recorded the passing of this pressure wave. Not once. The wave went around the world and came back, and then went around again, and came back again. Barometric instruments recorded the Krakatoa pressure wave passing their location not once, not twice, but 7 times over the course of 5 days as it circled the globe repeatedly, losing energy so slowly that it remained detectable on the other side of the planet for nearly a week after the eruption. The British scientist Simons, who led the Royal Society's investigation into the eruption published in 1888, documented testimony from across 4 continents of people who heard the sound and could not explain it. In Rodriguez Island, nearly 5,000 kilometers from Krakatoa, the sound was described as the distant roar of heavy guns. In Sri Lanka, people reported artillery fire. In the Andaman Islands, in Myanmar, in Western Australia, where police went looking for a ship in distress and found open ocean. The sound had crossed thousands of kilometers of open water and still arrived with enough energy to be mistaken for something happening nearby. Nothing in recorded human experience had done this before. Nothing has done it since. But the sound was only the beginning of what Krakatoa did to the Earth. The eruption displaced an enormous column of rock, ash, and gas into the upper atmosphere. An estimated 21 cubic kilometers of material was ejected. Some of it went into the stratosphere, the layer of the atmosphere that sits above the weather, above the clouds, above the reach of rain. And there it stayed. Fine particles of sulfur dioxide combined with water vapor to form a reflective aerosol layer that spread around the planet over the following months. This layer reflected a portion of incoming solar radiation back into space before it could reach the surface. The result was a measurable and global drop in temperature. In 1884, the average global temperature dropped by approximately 1.2 degrees Celsius. That sounds small. It was not small. Crops failed across the northern hemisphere. Weather patterns shifted. 1884 and 1885 were recorded as anomalously cold years across Europe, North America, and parts of Asia. Scientists now call this phenomenon a volcanic winter, and Krakatoa is the historical event that gave the concept its clearest documentation. And then there were the sunsets. The aerosol layer in the stratosphere did not just reflect sunlight, it scattered it. Short wavelengths of light were scattered more efficiently than long ones, which meant that red and orange wavelengths, the ones that dominate at low angles during sunset and sunrise, became dramatically intensified. For months after the eruption, people around the world reported sunsets of extraordinary, almost hallucinatory vividness. Vivid purples, deep crimsons, greens that had no right to appear in a sky. Artists documented them. Newspapers described them. The painter William Ashcroft made hundreds of sketches of London skies in the months following Krakatoa. The colors in them so saturated and strange that modern atmospheric scientists have used them as data points to reconstruct the distribution of the aerosol layer. Some historians have proposed that the blood-red sky in Edvard Munch's The Scream, painted in 1893 in Norway, was a direct visual memory of Krakatoa's atmospheric legacy, which persisted in the upper atmosphere for years. The tsunami that followed the eruption killed more people than the blast itself. Waves reaching 30 meters in height struck the coastlines of Java and Sumatra within minutes. More than 36,000 people died. Entire villages were erased. Ships were carried inland. A Dutch warship called the Beru was lifted by a wave and deposited 2 miles inland in a forest, where its rusted hull sat for decades. What Krakatoa revealed, more than anything else, is the scale of forces that exist beneath the surface of the world you walk on every day. The ground feels permanent. It feels fixed. It feels like the one thing that will not move. And then something underneath it shifts, and the sound travels 7 times around the planet, and the sunsets turn red in Norway, and the temperature drops in Pennsylvania, and police in Australia go looking for a ship that does not exist. The loudest sound in human history was not made by a human. It was made by the Earth itself, reminding everything living on its surface exactly who was in charge. And on the morning of August 27th, 1883, every living person on this planet heard it, whether they knew it or not.